Hey yo, so you watched 12 Angry Men.
I did. I did.
For anyone who doesn't know, when we had the show creators, Mickey and Conrad on, they pitched episode 7 as 12 Angry Men meets Margin Call. And
Yep.
now I know you love this season because I can't think of anything else that would make you go watch a 1957 movie on a whim. So what did you think about 12 Angry Men before we start?
You can see it in my Letterboxd review. I was a little let down. There was maybe 4 angry men, maybe.
You wanted
then
more Angry Men?
One German man he wasn't angry. He was just German.
But he had an angry scene though. I think almost every one of them had an angry scene.
Yeah, it's really good though. Like I wasn't expecting it to be that good, and maybe that's just my bias for color showing.
Oh my god! I mean, I saw you. I think you gave it 4.5 on Letterboxd.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, okay. Hey, you really liked 12 Angry Men, which is
liked it. I really liked it.
Surprising.
Did you go and look at my other 4.5s?
I was like, I didn't think you would like 12 Angry Men. Before we start, William, do you have any hot takes about 12 Angry Men or even Margin Call?
So I actually haven't seen Margin Call. I need to. I sort of know the structure of it and stuff like that. But I actually watched 12 Angry Men in a Film 101 class when I was in college and really enjoyed it. I liked how I kind of rub against sometimes movies that feel like stage plays. And that one, when I watched it, I remember being like, oh, I'm so into just how tense this feels, even for an older movie, even with just in the confines of this room. Like, it's so, like, you can feel the heat in it, because everybody's like walking around, they're sweaty, they're gross. Like, you can almost like smell it in some ways, right? So as a visceral experience, even in black and white, I was like really, really blown away with it. And then narratively, I thought it was really engaging as well. So it's been like 15 years since I've seen it, probably, maybe a little less, but I'm overdue for a rewatch for sure.
I rewatched it for this, and I just like the plot thing that came to my head was just, because everything you just said about the structure of all that is always true and everything, but the plot was just like, I can't believe this guy got off this case.
Yeah.
Because when you see the case that is laid out against him, he should be in jail. I'm sorry, like he just has Henry Fonda on his side. I was like, this is incredible. Well, he's so lucky.
That's the lawyer in you showing. Thank you. It's like I would lock this guy up immediately.
He's so lucky. But yeah, definitely watch Margin Call.
You need to see Margin Call.
It's one of those. It's one of those things that's always on my list. Like, my Letterboxd list to watch is very extensive at this point. But that's one of the ones that's like definitely close.
And I think it's like 100 minutes maybe. I think it's definitely less than 2 hours.
It's a tight one.
Yeah. Speaking of filmed stage plays, I watched Glengarry for the first time because of that one line in this episode. Which I was like, oh, I am actually being the bag of big Pierpoint if one line in an episode is making you go watch a movie.
I was gonna say, but that's what's cool about Conrad and Mickey, is that they have such a extensive film knowledge. Like, they were definitely, I think, more film guys than they were television guys. And I think that's what informs a lot of the language of the show visually. Is that they always wanted to feel very kinetic, very propulsive, and even something like the score. But they always, if you listen to them talk, they talk more in film references than they do television references. So they're not like, oh, we wanted to feel like this episode of The Sopranos or this episode of Mad Men. They're like, no, we wanted to feel like Margin Call meets 12 Angry Men. Like, we wanted to feel like heat.
Uncut Gems.
Those are the touch points that they're always referencing for stuff, not other television.
William, I'm going to pause you there, but I want you to hold on to that because it goes into something I want to talk about during the episode. So let's start. Remember where you were, and then I have the most obvious intro prepared for this episode. So let's begin, and we'll get back to that point.
Perfect.
Hello, and welcome back to the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. The podcast where the bins are always clean and the champagne, not Prosecco, is always flowing. I'm Bankole Mokwede, and today we're discussing the penultimate episode of Industry's third season. And you guys are in for a treat, because joining me to pause this episode, for them, the action is always the juice. It's William and Ale. How you guys doing? Welcome back. William, welcome for the first time.
Yeah, I didn't want to step on any intro toes there. So no, thanks for having me, lads. Happy to be here. This is one of my favorite episodes. I feel like I say that with every week's episode, but seven really is probably my personal favorite of the season. So I'm glad I could be here to chat with you both about it.
And you'd be right to say that every week, to be fair. I feel like this season, every episode just keeps getting better than the last.
So yeah, this is your best episode of the season.
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
I still haven't seen the finale, but yes, so far.
But I mean, so far, yeah. I know we'll get into all of that. Quickly, first things first, admin. Guys, William, welcome to the podcast. First time. He's a legit journalist, guys. Like, he writes for GQ, Complex, Men's Health, The Wrap. So, like, he's slumming it here. But for the purposes of you industry junkies, he interviewed Sagar, Radia for episode 4, Miriam, who plays Sweet Pea, for episode 5, and Ken Long for this week's episode 7. So please go back to his Twitter, which is at GoodmanW, for the links to his articles and read it and share it and all of that stuff. We are approaching the end of the season, so if you enjoyed our industry content and you haven't yet, yes, I know it's very sad, please rate and review on whatever podcast you're listening on. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. All of that stuff, it really helps us kind of grow the podcast. And then also you can subscribe to our newsletter. And if you're feeling generous, you can donate some money to our running costs. All of those links are in the description. Finally,
how much do you donate, Banky?
As little as they can afford. I've not fallen into that trap again. And finally, the Slough House crew returned this week with their thoughts on episode 3 and 4 of Slough House season 4. So please check that out. Industry season 3, episode 7, titled Useful Idiots, written by friends of the podcast, Vicky Down and Conrad K. I mean, 2 appearances, does that make them friends? I think we can just assume. Yeah,
I don't know those guys super well, but I have spoken with them 3 times at this point, and it's one of those things like, yeah, I feel like they would feel comfortable with you saying that for sure.
Hey, you seem hesitant.
I'm hesitant, but that's because I've been accused of being a snob before, so I don't want to ever say someone's my friend as much as I want to. As much as I want to be my friend.
It's a question. I put it out in the air. Whatever they want to do with that, that's up to them. William, I'm going to start. So basically, friends of the podcast, Vicky Down and Conrad K wrote and directed this episode. William, I'm going to start with you because obviously this is your first time on the podcast, and I assume you've been on the industry train since the first season. So I'll start off with you. What hooked you onto the show, and basically, what are your thoughts on the journey the show has gone on over the last 3 seasons, 4 years?
Sure. So I came into season 1 a little bit after it kind of had finished, or like right before the finale. I kind of caught up and binged it all at once, and then really enjoyed it. Season 2 was something that when I was at Complex, because at that point in season 1, I was writing, but not to the level where I had a lot of different PR contacts where I could reach out for screeners and stuff like that. And so when season 2 rolled around, I reached out to HBO and said, hey, at the time, Complex has like a weekly watch recommendations column. I would love to view industry for coverage and consideration in that column. And HBO very generously was like, sure, we'd love to send you screeners. And then I watched all of season 2 in pretty short order and immediately just really wanted to make sure that Complex was covering it in a really hard capacity. So season 2 is when I think kind of put my the pedal to the floor as far as like really trying to advocate for the show. I spoke with a lot of I spoke with Mickey and Conrad a couple of times throughout season 2, and then Ken and Mahala and Marisa for season 2, and all that coverage is on Complex if folks want to go back and check that out. But so I felt that season 3 has really been, I think Mickey and Conrad have even spoken about this a little bit, but it feels like a good fusion of, there's a couple of things. It's the, as a series progresses, you want to see it get more expansive in its worldview. You You want to see it start to grow. And I think season 2 did a good job of kind of moving us past the trading floor and getting into the characters a little bit more. But then there's such a wide tapestry now of what can be considered an episode of industry, and to have it touch all of these different sectors, whether it's a courtroom thriller like we got with with Company Man, or even just how the season opens with the stuff on the Lady Yasmin. I think the show is showing that it's capable of exploring more things, and I think it's always been a really good distillation of class, especially the British class system. I'm not super familiar with that, being an American, not unlike Eric and Harper, but I think even how the show presents that, I think they've done a really, really good job with that, especially this season. And it's the thing that continues to amaze me is how quickly Mick and Khan burn through plot, and that's complimentary. Like, that is not a bad thing. I think there are moments in this episode that very easily could have been an entire season. Like, there could have been an entire season with Pierpoint having this existential short crisis and them trying to figure out what they were going to do, but instead it happens in this really dramatically tense episode. As you said, directed by Bacon Conrad, their first episode that they're directing, which is pretty cool. First of 2, because they're directing 8 as well. Long-winded way of saying that the show has gotten progressively better each season, and I think this is kind of the perfect distillation of what the show is capable of doing when it's firing on all cylinders, which it really is.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like very similar to our journey. We watched season 1. We did, obviously we didn't have the podcast then, but we're like, okay, this is a little fun vibe show that we're enjoying, and we can catch it like every Monday morning, Monday evening. And then we started watching season 2 because we're covering for the podcast, and we're like, oh, this is actually just a phenomenal piece of television. Actually, it's not just a little vibe show. But I want to stay on that because this might not end up being a question, and maybe just more of a long-winded statement, but I've been thinking a lot about what kind of show industry is, especially in the wake of its growing popularity and critical acclaim, which we obviously all love and we support. And the obvious and go-to comp has been Succession, even by me several times, right? Which I think is entirely meant as a compliment, but can often be misplaced. I think the other lesser known comp is probably Billions. I never watched Billions, so I don't really have much language there. But from the little I know of it, it feels it's a bit. I should have watched Billions, right?
I feel like you are a Billions guy.
It's very much in my space. I just don't know why I just never started it.
I will say Billions is a little bit more pulpy than Industry is, and it's very. It can get very silly sometimes in an entertaining way. Like, it's a little bit more of like a very entertaining soap opera is basically what I would almost describe Billions as. It's for people who like to criticize industry, like financial people who criticize industry for being unrealistic. Billions to me feels like extremely unrealistic. It's the perfect, like, I just want a dumb show on Sunday night I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just want a deeply entertaining show that I can sit down and watch on a Sunday evening before I start my work week. Like, that is Billions to a T. So I would say that they're kind of circling in different lanes, but anyway.
Yeah, but that's the thing, because I also think, like, even from little I know of Billions, I knew that comp was a bit less accurate, but I still think Industry at its core is very different from both shows, and I've been trying to figure out how to articulate that difference, because obviously we call Industry prestige TV because to us that's the biggest compliment we can give a show since 2008. We haven't created a bigger phrase to describe a good show, right? But I feel like Industry as a show, it's almost like in its bones, it doesn't want to be in that class of quote unquote prestige TV.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like a show. Yeah.
Or is it the evolution of prestige for today?
But have we seen another show like Industry for it to be the evolution?
I don't think so, but I think this is the beginning. And the reason I say that is I tried to finish not Breaking Bad, but Better Call Saul. Yeah. I'm back in the wagon. I'm going through it. And something struck me about the prestige shows of back in the day. And that includes even things like, even shows that were like prestige, but not on like cable. So The Good Wife.
Like network TV, Good Wife.
Yeah.
Hannibal, maybe.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hannibal, for sure.
Those shows were slower.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've ever, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've ever had a fast show be considered prestige. And industry is running in a way that like not even something like Halt and Catch Fire was ever running.
Yeah. I mean, William, please feel free to.
Yeah, when you say running, are you talking about just from like a cultural perspective in terms, or are you actually talking about like plot, like structurally?
I mean plot wise.
But yeah,
I feel like
I'm trying to think of another show that has done this. You know, I'm sure there are ones that I'll remember a half dozen as soon as we're done with this, right? But I think the distinction is that there are some shows that are very propulsive from a plot standpoint that maybe don't have the same sort of like HBO prestige wrapper around them, right? And so I think that is maybe what delineates this a little bit more, is that it's just by its very nature and where it airs, it's going to have that larger wrap. It's going to look more like a polished product because it is something that is put out on HBO, right? If this was airing on USA, it might feel a little differently than how it feels on HBO. But to your point about the Succession comp, I think, you know, that's something that I've tried really hard. I think as I've grown, as I've like continued to revisit the show and revisit this season in particular, I think that was an easier comp in the first couple of seasons.
Yeah.
I think now, and I wrote this in my review for the wrap, but industry is just industry. Like I think that's I think the Euphoria meets Succession nomenclature is kind of handy to introduce it to people who are maybe TV literate, that you need kind of that quick elevator pitch to them to kind of get them on board. To me, the pitch that I've always kind of heard that I like a little bit better is kind of like Gen Z Mad Men, in the sense that it's a very...
I'm sure Mickey and Conrad love that.
I can't claim that is my idea. That's something I heard from a friend who heard from somebody else. So you know, I don't want to claim that as my own take, but if you think about it, it's a workplace drama that also doubles as like a very rich character study. And the difference between those is that, you know, Mad Men obviously was very deliberate with its pace, right? But you know, I think the thing with Mick and Con is that they come from the philosophy of, we trust in ourselves enough to come up with another good idea, so let's burn as many as we possibly can. And they love writing their way out of challenges. That's something that when I spoke with them for the season 2 finale, they're like, we already kind of have an idea of where we want to go with this, and if we don't, like, we will spend time thinking about it, and like, we're smart enough and we know these characters well enough to come up with some sort of logistics to get them out of where they are in a way that feels earned and truthful to the characters, and also works within the context of our show. And, you know, they continue to do that, I think, season after season.
Yeah, it's the Breaking Bad thing, right? In which the writers are like, Walt is going to have a gun in his trunk. We don't know why. We don't know why he has a gun. We don't know what's going to do, but we're just going to put a gun, and we trust ourselves to figure out in the writers' room why he has a gun when we come back for the second half of the season.
Exactly.
No, yeah, I agree with you, because I think, to your point as well, I think back then, maybe it's a perception thing, maybe it was actually a quality thing, but shows that were this fast in terms of their plot were perceived as being fast and loose. They're not really structured, which is kind of how we thought of season 1. Exactly, which is kind of how we thought of season 1. And then,
to be fair, those shows, not naming names, but they didn't do the character work that I think industry is
probably
doing.
Yeah, because it's. I think the reason I've been very infatuated with industry, and I was saying it because, like, it's difficult. I personally think it's difficult to do a character study when you're not, every episode doesn't follow, when you're doing 3-month time jumps in between episodes. Like, it's easier to do a character study if the entire season covers maybe 3 months, right? So you say, oh, what happens in episode 1 directly influences what happens in episode 2 and episode 3 and whatever. You're like, okay, this happens, but then they're managing to do this character study in almost snapshots of these characters' lives, which I feel like should be difficult, but they managed to make it work. Does that make sense? Like, I'm just like, how are you to? Yeah, but yeah, I think that was just the thing. Go ahead, sorry, William.
To quickly interject, I think the thing with that is though that these characters don't. There are circumstances around them that are causing propulsion, right? Like obviously what happens with Yasmin and her father, right? Like that is something that's worth kind of having that check in. But like on the other side of that, Yasmin is not like a radically fundamentally different person after her dad passes away, right? Like, you know, it is one of those things where it's like the circumstances around her life are different. She's more reliant on her job at Pierpoint now, right? Like that she has to have that job because she doesn't have her father's wealth. One, because he's dead, and then two, because of the existing sort of embezzlement scandal, right? She's cut off from that angle. So that puts her in a position where she needs to do this. You know, Harper is, I actually think if there's anybody that has like kind of changed, and this was, we're recording this. Can I say we're recording this? We're recording this a little bit ahead of time, and I just spent a lot of time kind of digging into episode 6 again. And what strikes me about 6 is actually how active Harper is trying to curb like her world killer impulses throughout that entire installment, and how despite her best actions, like that ends up manifesting because a lot of people are kind of putting that idea of her as a world killer onto her, despite the fact that she's actively trying to make choices to scale some of that stuff back. All this to say, like, I think that a lot of the characters within the industry don't change super, super dramatically. They're little incremental shifts here and there. And I think that makes it a little bit easier to kind of jump in between the raindrops on this, because the characters are only being pushed forward very, very incremental bits, which I think adds to the propulsion, but doesn't make these huge swings feel that crazy as far as time goes.
I mean,
checking in between them.
Also, in real life, no one really just changes like that.
Exactly.
That's just, but yeah, I mean, let's go into the actual episode. But just finally, on just a little bit of praise for Mika and Conrad. It's just, I don't know, I've just been very in awe of this season and what they're able to do with this season, because, like, again, this show feels just very out of place with the shows that we compare it to. This is a show that brazenly has referenced Heat, like word for word, twice already. Like, it referenced Mad Men, it referenced Coming to America, Trading Places. But it doesn't do it in a way like I don't know, other shows would be like, I don't know, other shows will let you know that they know that they're referencing Mad Men, or they know they're referencing Heat. Like, it referenced Succession, which should not work. But then this show managed to do it. And then also the writers can just drop in a Shakespeare quote or a biblical reference. So it almost feels like the best of, it's like this punk rock cousin of like fan fiction, or what would happen if Mad Men was set today, but also like an English major's thesis. So it's like this weird combination of the two of them. I just like, it's a very delicate balance they've been able to strike, and it just very impresses me a lot. But yeah, with nobody else anything, we'll go into the actual episode almost half an hour in. So William has watched the finale, so I'm not going to ask him any particular questions about the finale, so everybody, you guys can be calm, no spoilers here. As always, before we go into the actual nitty-gritty, I like to find out people's general thoughts on the episode. I think we already know. It seems to be both of you think it's the best episode of the season so far. I'm still in love with 6. And I think I've realized that it's a lot difficult for me to move on from episodes that I think are spectacular. Like, I remember after I watched last season, when we did season 2, episode 3, I was like, this is a bit, because I loved 2 so much. But then I went back to rewatch 3 and I was like, are you insane? 3 is incredible. What were you doing? So I think I realized that it's a little, so this episode, I had some criticisms about it. I think we'll get in as we go on. But as a whole, it's a great episode of television. It's like, I can understand that my love for 6 is holding me back, but at the same time know that this is just spectacular TV. And on any other show this year, it will probably be their best episode of the season. So yeah, let's talk about, should we start with Eric? Is that a good place to start?
The show starts with him.
The show starts with him, and also William got to speak with Ken Long, so we probably use some of those insights here. So quickly, Eric's episode is, he finds himself in the middle of the fight for Pierpoint Soul. The board and its new CEO is trying to find a way to stop Pierpoint's bleeding, otherwise they will no longer be a company by the morning. Wilhelmina and Philip, who we remember as the guy that was anti-ESG in episode 1, have the idea of being bought by Barclays. but Bill is opposed to this and wants to go for the cash injection route from Mitsubishi. Eric, as his loyal lieutenant, sides with him before he eventually stabs him in the back and plays the hero by using Ali's government connections to save Pierpoint. I'm going to start with a two-parter plot and character question. One, when do you guys think Eric decided he was going to stab Adler in the back? And two, what made him make that decision? Anyone can go first.
William, I want to hear what you think.
So I actually have a little bit of insight into this because I asked Ken this question.
Oh, perfect.
In a phrasing of it. So what I spoke with him about, specifically the decision and what he does to Adler, feels very reminiscent to, well, let me back up before that. When I spoke with Eric when I spoke with Ken about Eric for season 2, one of the things that really stood out to me in that conversation is he said, Eric is somebody who creates his own reality. He is a person who can walk up and down the trade floor with a baseball bat like he's the Bear Jew from Inglourious Bastards and sort of intimidate people and not get in trouble for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing for me with Eric this season is that it's twofold. One, he's not really in control of his own reality anymore because of what is happening in his personal life. And I think because of what is happening in his personal life, he's regressed to a point where he is more of a grad than the grads are. You know, we see him dating and drinking a lot and having casual drug use, right? Like he's conducting himself in the same way that like Yasmin, or maybe not Rob, but definitely like in the way that Yasmin and Harper might. So that kind of ties into a point where Eric is somebody, again, who has to kind of make this own reality for himself. And 7 is really a space where I feel like that version of Eric is finally coming back into play. I think having being in 6, we find out that his family, he didn't win the custody battle for his kids. So he's truly alone. He's truly isolated at this point, doesn't have a relationship with Harper, has torpedoed his relationship with Yasmin, although as she points out, he's not a man in her life at all, right? But like still, so he doesn't really have anything left at this point but Pierpoint. And so I think he has to kind of make a decision to decide whether or not he wants to go with his friend or go with the one thing that has kind of helped him create his own reality. So I think that's the reason why he actually makes the choice. But I think the other part of it too is that it's a choice that is very reminiscent of what he does to Harper in season 2, where he thinks that he knows what is best for the other person. And so when I asked Ken about this, basically the conversation is that he's like, yeah, I do kind of see a bit of an overlap there. And he kind of talked about the main point where in 5, where they have a conversation over cigars, and Adler's talking about how he doesn't want to spend time with his family. He wants to be at work. There's something in Eric that kind of, he wants to think that Bill should have to kind of choose to some extent. And he thinks in some way that he is kind of like saving him by taking him out of Pierpoint to be able to enjoy the time that he has with his family. So Ken views it as like a truly compassionate act insofar as it can be compassionate, basically. He said, it's a fine line to say how compassionate it was, but it's rooted in this desire of like, I think this is what you should be doing, so I am going to sort of enforce my will upon the situation. And I think part of that is also rooted again in the fact that like Adler again has this opportunity to be with his family that Eric does not have, and to be staring down the barrel of this awful thing. This is a perfect opportunity to sort of get Adler off the board in this way. But it's so telling. Like it's the moment that always strikes me in 7 is how Philip of all people is kind of like, this is like what you guys are doing is nasty work here. Like I want to be on record saying that this is bad stuff, but
I have it in my notes as the worst person makes a good point.
Like even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So I think that's kind of where the root of that comes from is twofold. It's kind of Eric seeing an opportunity to recreate this reality for himself that he hasn't been able to cultivate throughout the season, and then feeling like he knows best in some capacity to what should or shouldn't happen with Adler. So
Yeah. Hey, I'll get to you, but just to add to that point, you saying the whole thing about family reminds me of the fact that Eric quite plainly says spend more time with your family to Bill by the lift. Hey, your thoughts?
I like that reading, but I feel like it's very generous.
It's so generous. It's so
we're
being so generous to Eric.
I think it's very generous to Eric. Okay, and the reason I want to say this is because why does he at the lift tell in an incredible bit of direction, by the way? So like kudos, Mickey and Conrad. Why does he then tell Adler? It's a very I want her to know it was me moment, because he's using the same words that Adler used to him when he was basically sending him upstairs to do like the customer relations job. He was like, yes, more time with the family, it's better for the institution doesn't suffer.
I forgot about that I forgot that was what Adler said to him.
Yeah. And
You're
that's
right.
basically Eric telling Adler, I am killing you. Why would he do that if not to be mean? Because like if you want to send someone to just be like, okay, you know, I think this is the best thing for you, I will hide it. I will be like, okay, like do believe you're losing your mind.
You keep on the facade. Yeah.
But yes, go home and take care of your health, spend time with your family. But this, I feel like when I was watching it, I thought Eric made the decision in the bathroom when he's speaking to Tom. And Tom pissed for like 30 seconds, which I thought was incredible. I feel like that's just a power move. You don't pee that long normally next to someone. But in the bathroom, when Tom asks him, what do you believe in? I think that really crystallizes what Eric is going to do. Because Eric says, I believe in the trade. I believe in what is going to, like, I only believe in what's going to work.
Yeah.
And right now, he doesn't believe that Adler, maybe not like the specifics or the mechanics of the deal working for Pierpoint, but he doesn't believe that Adler will work for him. Like Adler getting into the right position, I don't think Eric believes that will work for him. And that goes back to Wilhelmina's conversation with Eric saying, why are you always like, what has he promised you? Has he promised you that like when he goes up, he'll pull you upwards? And Eric says, yeah, he always does, or something along that line. Yeah. So I thought it was patricide. I feel like that's the theme of the season. I feel everyone is trying to kill their father.
Man, calling Adler Eric's father is kind of fucked up considering Eric hired him as well.
Yeah. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, it's the whole complex. I think this is so great because it shows us the quality of Eric as a character and just the writing, because I think we're going to have kind of three different answers. Because my answer is a bit generous to Eric as well, not as generous as William and Ken's reading. But my question on my third watch was, does Eric, this was, again, second watch, I was with you, I was like, it was in the bathroom that he made his decision. But on third watch, I was like, does Eric actually care about the soul of Pierpoint? Is he actually a company man? Because, first of all, it looks like, how do I put it? When Adler is complaining about his shares, Eric looks at him and is like, is that what's important right now? Like, what are you talking? And I was like, is that when? He started going up in his head, like, this guy might just be here for the money. So it's a very generous reading, I know, but it's also like, maybe that was when he was like, oh, maybe, because I also don't think he was on board with Mitsubishi plan from the beginning. He was only doing it because it was Adler's plan.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was more in line with Philip's idea for the Sovereign Wealth Fund.
But that's why he makes the call to find out about what's going on with, he calls Ali. And so that's what, to me, that feels like when he made the actual decision. I think the episode does a good job of kind of, as the season has done, Eric is in this kind of power struggle between Wilhelmina and Adler for the battle of Pierpoint's soul, ostensibly. And so I think throughout this entire episode, it's very like, and I hate to compare it to another show, but it's a fitting metaphor. Chaos is a ladder, right? And if Game of Thrones taught us anything, like there's an opportunity to take a chaotic situation and bend it to your will and be able to manifest something for yourself out of that. So I think throughout the entire episode, Eric is trying to feel out what situation is going to kind of provide him with the most benefit. And I think that's also tied into, Eric does believe in the trade and he believes in the bank. He believes in this place. This is, again, really the only thing he has left at this point. So what can I do that's going to ensure that I continue to have a home to come back to? I have a place, because this is all I have left at this point. So I think the moment where it probably crystallizes is after he has that conversation with Ali, and then really kind of firmly comes together as he has the conversation with Tom in the bathroom, and that's him almost kind of talking himself into it.
Sorry, no, Ali's after the bathroom.
After, yeah.
He has the conversation in the bathroom.
Yes, that's first. Right. That's right. Yeah. So I think it's some combination of but that flow of events, I think regardless still is kind of, it's like he's kind of testing the waters at that point, and then once he gets kind of the confirmation that from Ali that there's an opportunity here, that is when he really kind of pushes forward at that point. But I think it's a constant reevaluation throughout the entirety of the episode until he gets to a point where how is this situation going to benefit me in the most possible way?
Yeah. Best and I think obviously both Tom and Wilhelmina accuse Adler of false heroism, that he doesn't really care about this. And I was like, yeah, you're right, because this is a man who...
They are right.
I was like, this is a man who he didn't care about Harper being sexually assaulted until he remembered that she prints beers. And it's funny because I was like, this is actually why TV is incredible. Because when Eric, even on my third and probably fourth, fifth watch, when Eric stabs Adler in the back, I'm almost like, oh, Eric, why are you doing that? I feel bad for Adler, almost forgetting that this is a vile human being. But the show has done 2-3 episodes to make us, if not at least sympathize with Adler. I was like, this is why TV works. This is why TV can be great. Because you forget that this man is a terrible piece of shit. And you're like, oh, Eric, why are you doing this to this? The moment Eric starts questioning him in the boardroom, I was like, oh. When you can see the car crash coming, I was like, oh no, Eric.
Yeah.
Eric. Yeah, because Wilhelmina is right. He loved cutting people. And even at that, it's not Wilhelmina, it's just plain not doing this. I mean, let's talk about that scene when... let's do the lift first. Because throughout the episode, there's some very beautiful directing in this episode. But throughout it, I'm like the Bart Simpson meme. I'm say it to Mika and Cora. I'm like, where's your shot? I know you have a shot that you've been thinking about for 8 weeks. Where is it? And then they get to the lift, and I'm like, this is so beautiful.
That's
I was like Ken Long behind Trevor White. I was like, this is just... And then he comes. I was like, this is so expertly done. I hope they are proud of that shot. Let's talk about the scene when they decided they're going to not only kill Adler, but also just desecrate his legacy. Because also a man walks off in protest from the meeting. But
I didn't even catch that.
He just stands and leaves. He's like, I can't be here for this. And then Tom looks at him and chuckles. Yeah, I don't know. It's just funny the way things start to compound. Obviously Tom, you realize why he's been CEO at 5 different companies that are about to go down, because he literally okay, who are we going to pin this on? Wilhelmina jumps on it, Eric jumps on it. Yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts on that, or just generally the Eric section before we move on?
It's really interesting, I think, for as much kind of evidence that we see for Eric to make this decision for Adler, I don't think he has taken the step further to then pin all of the ESG failings onto Adler. And what's so interesting about that is that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that kind of starts with Wilhelmina looking to sort of pivot from very clear, because she is kind of
Tom. I think it's Tom. Starts with Tom.
And then over to Wilhelmina, and then Ken.
Yeah.
Ken is kind of, because I asked him a little bit about this as well, kind of how he put that moment. But Eric he does the with the finger point. He's like, yes, that is what happened. So it is very clearly that they're all kind of talking themselves into this as it's happening in real time. And it's just striking to me that even in that moment, again, that's not something that Eric had necessarily even thought through at that point. But even with that, is still kind of talking himself into it to a certain level to get to that point. To me, that almost feels worse than the actual like killing, quote unquote, of Hadler is to then turn around and like it's not enough to send him out. You have to then turn around and do it in this way too. It just feels like it's
it's pissing on his grave.
On his grave.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you gonna say?
It goes back to what Tom says. What Eric says earlier. I think Tom has presented him with a trade because Tom floats the idea to the room. He's like, oh, you know what they say about like I've heard that it can really have some
connections to risk
on your appetite for risk and that kind of thing. That is a float. Tom's presenting a trade, and then Wilhelmina is like, it kind of works, doesn't it? And then Eric is like, yes, it does. And I'm going to now make myself believe in this in order for the rest of the actions that will come after this to make sense.
The funny thing as well is that none of that works without Eric putting the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah,
because they're literally like,
they're putting it to him.
You're the closest person to him. If you say this, then who are we to say anything?
They're floating it to him. I actually wanted to talk about Eric earlier on in the episode. So when he first gets up into the room, I clocked on my second time of watching. I was like, this is probably Eric's first time in this kind of room.
In the C-suite, yeah.
Yeah, like everybody else there felt comfortable, but he looked and probably felt very uncomfortable. And
Adler
then
literally tells someone to stand up for Eric, like to give Eric a seat. Yeah.
But then Eric wants to leave. Why do you think he wants to leave, and why do you think he stays?
It's a good question.
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. I think he wants to leave. I genuinely think he thinks out of his pay grade. Like he just feels
that's
like,
what I was thinking.
What can I offer here? I don't know why he stays. Maybe just to be by Adler's side.
I think he notices Adler being a little unsteady and says, okay, I'm going to ride with you like you're my guy. So I'm going to be here for you, which actually plays into the more generous reading, I think, of his actions at the end. It's like, oh, you might actually be losing it a little bit. Like maybe it's better for you to not be in these sorts of high stress situations.
Yeah.
But I think that just adds to the overall heartbreak of
him stabbing him. Yeah.
Because I think he does stay to help, but then in the end kills his dad. And I think this is the biggest betrayal that's happened on this show so far.
Oh,
because it's definitely one that's more intentional, more deliberate, right? Like I think Yasmin's perceived betrayal of Harper is Harper knows that regardless of how Yasmin feels, that like Harper literally did do everything in her power to try and stop that from happening. Whereas like at no point does Eric's moral compass kind of come into play here about this decision, right? Like it is something that I think, let me amend that slightly. He's obviously weighing the decision or weighing a decision throughout the course of the episode, but then he still decides to move forward and plant the knife, right? Like he has to do that. At no point did Harper actively like plant the knife into Yasmin as far as like.
That's fair.
Making that happen.
Is this a bigger betrayal than Harper betraying Daria in season 1?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it depends on how you
based
want
on the history.
Yeah, it depends upon how you want to rank your sins, right? Like, what is more damning? Like, at this point, you know,
she'd known Daria for 6 months to Ayo's point, and Adler and Eric have known each other for like 20 years. So
yeah, and so there's and I think with not that like brushing rampant sexism and sexual abuse and like from a systematic perspective under the rug is good either, but like you're sensibly condemning a man to death at this point to a certain extent, right? Like this is
maybe literally.
It's not going to be with this, like it's not like even if Adler is perfectly fine, he's going to need a truly full clean bill of health before he can probably go back to any other job after this point. So you're kind of putting him out to pasture in a lot of ways. And I don't know. Again, it kind of depends on how you want to scale your sins. I would probably say the systematic portion feels worse because of the context of what that is, but the personal, I think, like the personal damage, like what you're doing to destroy that relationship, almost feels just as intense as something like that because of the connection that they have together.
Before we move on, I want to talk about Tom and just kind of the mechanics that they go through in this episode to try and save Pierpoint. I think I love Tom.
Yeah, you love an older white man in a TV show.
And it's really a problem. It's really a problem because he's so delightful.
You love Adler got killed this episode, so you're like, I'm taking over from Tom. I'm taking Tom over.
He's so delightful. When I forget it was Adler, someone tells him to go fuck himself, and he's like, "I do that regularly, thank you."
Yeah, that was Adler. Yeah,
I loved that. But this episode, and I guess I get the margin call like comparison because of the setting. I think is what really makes this like a margin call comparison.
And the time,
and the time crunch that they have.
Yeah,
but the mechanics of what happens in this episode really reminded me of Too Big to Fail, which is a 2011 movie around the 2008 financial crisis. And it has a lot of the same things. They're calling on the Fed for help. It's about Lehman dying, but it's told from the point of view of the Fed chairman, basically, and how he's trying to save a bunch of different companies and he has to let Lehman die, that kind of thing. But a lot of the mechanics are very similar. Barclays comes in to buy Lehman, and then the regulator doesn't allow it or won't allow it in time. And then Mitsubishi is also in play for a little bit.
Actually, Mitsubishi as well.
Yes, Mitsubishi.
Also, there is a direct reference then. It's not,
I think it's a direct reference.
Because I'm guessing Too Big to Fail is based on the truth, right? So yes, only just based on real life.
That struck me as I was watching it the first time. I was like, this reminds me of this movie, but I couldn't remember the name.
The Tom, I should have written out his name, but the actor that plays Tom, like, he's an actor. He's a known actor. He was on Downton Abbey. He's like, he's one of those guys that you can get when you're in your third season of a HBO BBC show. Like, they couldn't get him in season 1. They just couldn't. That's just the way things work. You get him come and do maybe 1 or 2 episodes. No, but he's really good. Like, I think he might be 40, but he shows that, like, he's been doing this for a while. And he also gets to play some comedic points, which is really good. Like,
it's so good.
Like when he does the little dance when the Barclays CEO is like, we're going to sign, and he's like, it's a really good performance. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Lehman...
A great eater too. Like he has this couple moments where he's like eating like it's like a finger food of some sort. It's not like olives or it's like nuts or something. The clementine. That's what it is. There's some like physicality he does with it. It's really good.
I didn't catch it until like maybe my third watch actually. His, I guess, assistant, that's what I can call her, but like she takes his gum in her hand before he gets on the phone.
Oh, really?
Earlier in the episode.
I do like whoever played his assistant. I couldn't find her in the credits, but she has like a presence about her that I thought was like very cool, because she's like when they're first kind of like getting everybody into the room, like she seems to be the one that's kind of like getting everything organized and everybody into place.
She's in a lot of the episode.
Yeah,
like she's wanna get the Barclays CEO up. Like she's not, the focus is never really on her, but she's in a lot of the episode.
She's there.
Doing a lot of acting as well in the background. Like you can see her face when some of the deals break down and everything. I think the Lehman, it's not even like they quite outrightly say Lehman, even from last week's episode. And I think the Pierpoint was poised to be the Lehman here. I went to look at stuff. Lehman was around for 158 years. Pierpoint is 158th year. Like it's very, very obviously Lehman Brothers coded. But yeah, I like the line, I guess, value is determined by history. In which, and then Eric pitches to Alia, then is like, gentlemen, do you want to buy a piece of history?
Buy a piece of history.
Yeah. Which is, again, why I'm still on the fact that, like, was Eric really just really a company man? And, like, he's really just, Pierpoint is him. He's Pierpoint. But we can move on to Yas and Rob, if everyone has finished with Eric. Yasmin, in a top-tier terrible day for her, Yasmin is informed by a member of the Hanani board that they are going to cover the financial damages of the whole, everybody's suing them because, her father stole money, but with the caveat that she'll be hung out to dry as the face of the scandal. They'll tell the public and the press that she knew about everything. Otherwise, they'll fight her in court to recoup some of the money they spent. And well, she's still broke, as we know, because she's riding the bus. Rob has a job interview in Wales, so he convinces Yasmin to go on a road trip with him where they bond, have some long-awaited conversations, and he's eventually offered the head of business development if he can secure Silicon Valley funding. So my main critique of this episode, which is like, that's saying a lot, saying it's a critique, was that I felt like these two storylines felt very disparate to me. And it was quite difficult for me to take them as one. I think it really helped because, like, obviously we love Robert on this podcast. I think he's the best character on this show. And obviously Yasmin, Marissa is so great in this episode, but Yasmin is going through some emotional stuff. And again, the fact that we love this character, spent 3 years, it was easier, but my brain was kind of like, I could see the criticisms, if that makes sense, of like, these two things feel very different. But I don't know if, like, what do you guys think?
If I can jump in and say, I think that is just by design because of how, and now you can agree or disagree, like how effective that contrast is. For me, it worked pretty well because one, the stuff, the battle for Pierpoint is so tense. And even in the moments where we have like, where it cuts away to like Rishi and Sweet Pea and Anuraj on the floor, like there's already so much tension happening there. It's hard to keep that momentum for an entire episode, right? Even within White Mischief, like it's not, the entirety of White Mischief is not the whole gambling sequence, right? Like it feels like a naturally tense episode, but there's stuff that bookmarks the beginning and the end of it that doesn't make it feel like this just pot boiler the entire time. And so I think just from a pacing standpoint, like it can't just be go, 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 go all the time. Like you have to have something to take away from it. And I think what's very clear about the Yaz and Rob stuff is that it's like, this is kind of what their relationship has been building to for 3 seasons, is that 100%. Conversation on the pier. And so I think like that is a really, to me, that feels just as exciting as anything that happens in the boardroom. It's presented through a different lens. And so I think that's why it really stands out to me, but I can definitely understand from like a tonal perspective that it feels like a bit of whiplash to kind of go in between that. I think it worked really well. And it's also nice to just like, I don't know, it's nice to have like a little road trip and kind of get out. And that's a good way to actually like literally get out of the boardroom too, is to go to the space, because that area feels so claustrophobic, than to go to something like the pier where it feels so expansive and so open.
Road.
And yeah, he's like, Rob has it like, let's like do what all culture has done, like forsake the open road and pretend it's freedom. Or I'm summarizing there, but like, that's great basically line. The quote. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
I think the first time I watched it, I had the same thing as you, because I think I'm built for it to be tense the whole time. So every time that we leave that, I'm just like, oh, it's a little bit of a letdown. I kind of want to go back there, so I get it. But I think on the second watching, I was like, this feels like the best of Industry season 1. That story with them felt to me like when, like in season 1, it would just be someone's birthday, and that's all that. We're not really doing any like hard finance stuff.
Okay. And sounds like stakes are very low and personal.
Stakes are lower, but like what's happening to the characters is so impactful. And I was like, oh, I love this actually. So I think on second watching, I really enjoyed it.
I think even on first watch, I was like, I can tell that this is great. Like the Yasmin Robert thing is great. The Eric thing is great. And I actually think Mickey and Conrad are doing a really good job of making it work as one, better than most people would. But I was just like, I still I see some of the fraying edges. you're right. As you watch it, and as I went into the first episode thinking it was Margin Call meets 12 Angry Men for the entire episode.
Fair.
Like, I thought the entire episode was going to be that. So I think that was a bit. I was like, okay, when you know what it is, it's a lot easier to kind of like take it all in. Sorry, William, you're going to say something. I cut you off.
Sorry, no, I apologize for jumping in. I have a bad habit of like, if I don't sometimes remember my thought, then anyway, what you were saying was, I think it's the difference between the one half of the episode is very plot driven or plot heavy, and the other is very character heavy. And those are just two different kinds of storytelling that are both necessary, but feel almost sometimes in direct contrast to one another. Yeah. And so I think when those two things align, it can, to your point, you can see the fraying of the edges a little bit there. But I think it's, on the first watch, I think that is something where it's like, I could definitely see people kind of rubbing against that a little bit. But I think upon subsequent watches, it's one of those things where it's like, it feels a little bit more seamless there, because I do think you have to have a bit of a release valve from how tense the things are there. And I think the stakes of like what is happening with especially with Yaz, but then also the dynamic of their relationship is just as like resonant as anything that happens in that boardroom.
Let's talk about it. So first of all, I just want to say that the snobbiest thing I think Yasmin has ever done is how she eats chips. So she breaks it off with one hand instead of biting into it. I'm sorry, she's using two hands to eat one chip. This is going to be my heel. That's incredibly snobby. Who are you, Yasmin? Where did you grow up? Why are you eating chips like that? Don't break a chip and eat it.
Wait, so I didn't even notice that. She like literally splits it in half and has one half and then has the other.
Yeah, I don't think it was half. I think it was like a tiny bit. Like she takes it with her left hand, I think, and then breaks it with her right hand. And I'm like, what are you doing?
That's my girl.
2 hands for one chip.
I've been told I eat popcorn in a really weird way, because like
how do you eat popcorn?
Like I put my hand in the bag or the bucket, and then I grab a bunch, and then I put it in my other hand, and then I pick one at a time from my other hand. And I've been told that's weird, so I get it.
Why wouldn't you just pick one?
It's about
at a time
control, guys. It's all about control. It's all about control.
I take a full handful and shove as much of it into my mouth as I physically can, and all in one go. So I don't know if that's any better either.
So rewind. So you take it with your right hand, assuming.
Yeah.
You put all of it in your left hand.
I put as much as I think will fit without being messy in my left hand, and then I pick.
You start picking it from your left hand.
One or two.
You do one by one.
One or two, and I do the same thing with like Skittles.
Yeah, maybe it was you actually. I know someone that was doing, I think, one Malteser at a time or one Skittle. That's incredibly psychopathic. I'm sorry. Yeah. So sorry.
I get it. Go Yasmin. They don't know what it's like to need to control everything.
Let's just talk about the whole Yasmin and Robert thing as a whole. On rewatch, I felt like the living room scene was actually my best scene of theirs. I know the obvious one is the obvious one, but I really like that living room scene.
I agree. I think the acting, and I think the like what comes out of it is so good, because I think that's where she has that line where she goes, I can't really see a way out. Heartbreaking line reading. And then Rob is like, yeah, come on, let's go out.
Like, they're not here for you. Robert is like, that living room scene was so okay. I'm gonna give you guys option. Actually, William, you're the guest. I'll give you the option. Do you want to do Yaz and Robert, i.e. on the pier, in the bedroom, all of that, or do you want to do Yasmin's decision? Which one do you want to do first?
I think on the pier, because there's a lot of meatiness to that scene. I also just the way in which that scene is shot, to me, I think is like it's very tender, it's very intimate. That pier is not very crowded by nature, so it really is kind of just the two of them, Rob there and his Stony hanging out, patch on and everything,
badge
on and everything. But to me, it's, again, I do think it's one of those scenes, not unlike, to reference Mad Men again, it's kind of like the moment in the suitcase where it does feel like the two of them are kind of just like sitting there and really having like honest conversations with one another that are not done from a position of Yasmin trying to like control the situation in any capacity. Marisa did an interview with GQ, timed to episode 5, where she talked about that she's like, I think Yasmin's actually really bad at her job, but what she's really good at doing is getting people to do what she wants them to do. And I think so much of the conversation, the relationship rather between Rob and Yasmin is rooted in Yasmin getting Rob to do things for her. And I think one of the nice things about this season is seeing them actually sort of like build a legitimate relationship together, and not something that feels like more of like a partnership, right? Like it feels like a true relationship in this platonic way that is also wrapped up in kind of some level of feeling for one another, whether that's love or whatever it might be. But there is a level of admiration there between the two of them. But I think that scene does such a good job, I think, of getting at what has made that relationship so much like a Rubik's Cube, where I'm always looking at it and turning it over and finding new like shapes and hues to it every single time in which I watch it, because the way that they play it is always just like so interesting and complex. And it's yeah, I think it's just that relationship. It's always kind of hard to tell where they are with one another. But in a way that's kind of just like, if you guys could really just figure your shit out, you would be perfect for one another in a lot of ways. But they're always continually, and mostly on the Yasmin side of things, like putting themselves in a position where they're not capable of succeeding that. And so for Yasmin to have the revelation and have the self-awareness to be like, I don't know if I've actually ever loved anybody before. Now, whether or not she's lying to herself, that's a different story. But for her to have some level of like self-awareness and self-realization, especially coming from someone who has like really not had to reflect upon their life in any meaningful way, does show, for as much as we've talked about Yasmin not really growing, I think that does show some growth to her.
Yeah, what are you gonna say?
I thought it was shot like the climax of a rom-com.
Yep.
That's what it felt like to me. Like
so
the Pierre scene from
like a good thing.
Yeah, a good thing. No. I thought it was excellent. I thought
No, I mean good for the characters, like a happy scene.
Yes. It's a good scene for the characters. Like maybe not necessarily happy, but it's good in that it helps their relationship go forward. It's like the turning point of, hey, stop trying to obscure what this is. Like, I know who you are. Be normal with me.
Yeah.
I thought it was excellent.
Whatever vulnerability that you're feeling right now, sit in it. We are beyond the game. And just incredible line, incredible delivery from Harlotte. Okay, so there are 2 importantly unfinished scenes in this episode. And this is the first one. What do we think is the after effect of that kiss? Because I read it as Yasmin pulling away, and obviously we cut to them going back to their room. So like, what do we think? Is it like, well, yeah? What did you think? Hey, I'm sorry. What did you think after that scene? Like, what was your reading of it?
I think obviously, I think she wants to do, because I think she has feelings for Rob. So I think she wants to start something with him. I do think she is still reeling from everything that's happened so far in the episode. And like, she's wrangling the decision that she has to make. And it's driving her crazy to the point where and this might be me projecting, but I feel like maybe she feels like she doesn't deserve Rob in that instance. Like, here's someone that has come to me, he's as pure as someone in my world can be. And I'm wrangling these like thoughts and feelings about doing something terrible, which I think then leads very cleanly into the next.
I kind of felt that as well. Yeah.
So I think that's why she's away, because she doesn't think she's ready.
No, I absolutely agree with that take. I think it is rooted in kind of just like, I have so much other stuff going on in my life that I can't even begin to sort of think this. But I also think it stems from the like, you just have to sit in this, right? Like, I don't think there's much more to that scene from that point forward, sort of kind of just being like, she just has to live with what's going on right now. And so there's really, it just, at that point, it makes sense to kind of end the scene there and move forward to where things are, which is her, then taking the pills and trying to have some sort of like deeper emotional reckoning with things.
Does Robert read it as a rejection,
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay.
A kiss is a
yeah,
kiss. A win is a win.
She takes the magic mushroom, their first kiss. She takes it's a bit crazy, isn't it?
That is crazy.
27 episodes in, it's their first kiss. She takes the magic mushrooms and then she cuts herself, and Robert comes in, and then she has the whole thing of, "Am I a bad person?" That's the Prestige TV line.
That is the Prestige TV line.
And
well, is that the line? Because then she goes, "Tell me that I'm allowed to do bad things," which I think is better than "Am I a bad person?" And then she goes, "Henry used to get hard when I cried too," which I think is a Prestige TV line. I think that's the line.
That's not that's the Mickey and Conrad line. That's
the Mickey and Conrad line. That's the new Prestige.
Henry used to get hard when I cried too. It's just, I'm not even going to start unpacking that.
I can't unpack it. That. I don't think I have the experience to unpack that.
That's a tough beat for everybody involved. That's tough for Rob to have to hear that. That's tough for Yasmin to be in a situation where that was what her dynamic with Henry was. Like, that's not good for anybody.
Yeah. I don't have the experience. I don't have the background balance. I don't have the kink history.
I can't unpack it.
It's not for me. Okay, so final thing with Yaz and Rob, which is, I do understand this scene or what this scene was trying to say, so I want you guys to please help me here. The extra scene with the receptionist in the morning. This might go back to our earlier point of people don't change, quote unquote, but why is Yasmin being mean to her, or rather being mean about her to Robert, even after their conversation the night before?
Two things. I think the first one is, and I guess the more basic reasoning is just jealousy. I think she is jealous that Rob is getting attention from someone that isn't her. And
what happened to past that? Wasn't that the whole thing about on the pier?
I don't think she can. I think she's marked her down as like a threat. So, and to defend the Hanani girl, I think the receptionist was being a little mean to her. I can't lie.
You think so?
A little bit. I think there was a little bit of snottiness there, but like, that's whatever. And I think the other reading is something that, goes back to something Rob says earlier in the episode to her about her only really being able to perk up when she's putting someone else down. I think that's just her, what's it called? Default setting.
Well, I mean, so William, any thoughts on that scene?
I think it's in some ways it's kind of like, Diana has that line. She's like, when we were cruel together. I don't think it's like going is that far, but like, I don't know. I do think that is kind of just like her personality. I think she's doing it in a way where it doesn't feel quite as malicious as it does the night before. It feels a little bit more kind of like you're poking somebody in the rib. And I think that's Yasmin's way of trying to communicate that she is kind of back to normal. To your point, it's where it's kind of just like, last night was crazy, but we're good. I'm good. Like, let me show to you how good I am by sort of like denigrating this other person, because that's what I do, because I come from all this huge background of privilege. So I think it is some level of kind of like resetting and trying to reestablish kind of their dynamic after he saw her in such a like extremely vulnerable position.
It just seemed weird to me because, one, Robert has said, you don't need to act with me, literally the night before. And then two, he's like, stop being mean about this girl. Like, that's not what we're doing here. And he quite clearly doesn't respond to her statement. It's just like, Yasmin, you should have known better there. Should we talk about Yasmin's decision? I'm just going to ask you guys, does anyone feel any judgment towards her making the decision? People seem afraid to speak.
I'm scared to show myself because the answer is no.
Yes, the answer is no. I'm sorry. I do think William, what do you think?
I think this is a situation where I'm going to plead the fifth based upon what I've seen, because I think there is how that decision pairs with what comes next. I think, so I don't want to say too much about it. That is one of those things where it's hard for me to talk about this without talking about what's coming next. So
Ayo, you and I.
Yeah,
I personally think she should have maybe I think she should have threatened it first before pulling the trigger. I don't think she's pulled the trigger just yet.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, she has to do, like, she cannot just take the heat. Like, Teresa, I'm sorry, but like, that's just, I cannot hold Yasmin against, I cannot hold this against Yasmin, unfortunately.
Also,
are you on board here?
the board lady was like fucking menacing, man. Like,
she was so mean. She was
that
so
scene
mean.
scared me.
Oh my god, she was just like,
the way she whispers, "Accept the money." Bruh.
These are the facts. She's like, these are the facts. It's just like, you take the money and you just like, no, it's like no money comes without strings. I was like, which is actually, again, Wilhelmina says that later in the episode, doesn't she? There's nothing like free money. Okay, William unfortunately had to head out, but thank you very much for jumping on, William. It was great to speak with you. Okay, we're going to wrap up, not now, but soon. But let's just quickly talk about Robert's job. So he explains that, well, we know what his job was, or what his interview was. He was interviewing for a magic mushrooms company. Do you know where the connection is from?
No. Where's it from? He mentions, but I couldn't trace it.
So he says he met somebody called Pierre.
Yeah.
Now he met Pierre. Pierre is basically talking to him during the ayahuasca trip.
Ah. So
Pierre,
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Pierre is also Henry's friend from the second episode, where Henry's like, I have a friend who does.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So like, all of it has come back around, and that's how Robert might have got this job in Silicon Valley.
Because I was just thinking, I can't believe he took Henry seriously when Henry was like, we need to monetize this ayahuasca trip.
I guess that's a whole different kind of, because I guess the argument here is that this is not really what they say. It's non-invasive to their
whatever.
Henry says
monetizing a hallucinogen.
Yeah,
they are.
I mean, I think the obvious thing here is to be like, oh, are they trying to write Robert off the show?
Go and join Gus.
I feel like no.
I don't think so.
I feel like usually when something like this comes up in the penultimate episode, it usually falls through by the finale. So I still expect that to be here. I mean, we're going to talk about Harper now, actually. We're speaking about Harper. Emike was on our preview episode, The Trading Desk, after episode 5. And she mentioned how she believes that her own is death, but I don't think that she's going to go that far, but she believes that the show was building towards a Harper-less future. But yeah, let's talk about Harper, because Harper has the other unfinished scene that I mentioned earlier. She is informed by Rishi that the Barclays CEO is at Pierpoint. Obviously,
first of all, she's moved out. She's now in a hotel.
Yeah, she's sleeping
after
with
the explosions
staff.
in episode 6, and she's fucking men of color again. So
yeah, but they also
a win is a win.
But she's also fucking down, in Henry's words.
It's getting harder for her. It's getting harder for her.
She's gonna be stuck with Joe Biden and Bill Clinton.
Obama.
Cafe au lait. Yeah, we'll get to the Rishi thing in a second. But then, so she goes to tell Petche that, like, look, we need to stomp out. Barclays is about to buy Pierpoint. Their stocks are going to go up. And Petra is like, no, let's hold the line. And basically she tells Petra that, look, the reason I even know this information is because I was in the bathroom and I heard it, which I didn't know was privileged information.
It is
but
privileged.
Emike mentioned that it's privileged information during that preview episode, which means she's done insider trading again. So, and then that scene ends, but the scene doesn't end, right? They cut from there, but the scene doesn't end. And the next thing we do is we see Petra calling Otto Mustard and telling her, look, Harper is being misbehaving. And that scene is shot so well. Otto looks like a Bond villain.
He is. He doesn't look like one, but is. He is one.
And then
even the way he sends his guy to scoop up Harper at the end of the episode.
Scary.
That's a Bond villain move.
So scary. Like, I was like, what is going on? So I mean, okay, let's talk about Harper in general. I guess the question is like, so do you think that's actually Petra like cutting ties? It isn't like this plan that they have or anything.
I think that's it. I think her
Petra is married to a black man, by the way.
Sorry? Also,
or at least
very shocking.
dating it,
Really,
or at least dating
really
a black man.
really enjoyed finding that out. Very, very good episode for black men. Very good episode for black men.
Men of color, Ali.
Yeah, men of color. There
Just
was
men of
also a
color in
black
general.
woman in the boardroom at
Yeah. They didn't say
no
anything, but
lines.
that's fine.
No
Yeah.
lines. That's nasty looks. Nasty. The nastiest looks in the whole episode.
Showing
Watch
her
it again
arms.
and look at her.
Very great arms. Like I was just like, you know what? You've been in the gym, show it off. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah, so I think Petche is at her wit's end with Harper because she uses some very choice expletives in this episode. Do you want to say the expletives that she says? Because I don't want to.
No, you say them.
No,
what,
I'm a Christian.
You said?
Anyways, she...
Oh, I'm not a Christian.
I don't know. Anyways, I think she's genuinely at her wit's end now because, and like mirroring to like
know.
what
That's
happened
incredible.
to Eric, between Eric and Harper. Like Harper's done something that she's just like, what the hell? Like this is illegal. And then you're telling me, therefore making me an accomplice, low-key.
After the fact, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's real. I think she's going to Otto to be like, hey, Otto, this babe is going to throw us in jail and fuck up your money.
Yeah.
So Otto is going to lean on her like any good villain will.
Harper always smokes like she hates. Like her smoking is so anxiety inducing. Like she's always smoking like she's like literally sucking out the nicotine. Yeah, it's like always like. But yeah, I mean that's kind of what happened. Okay, I was a bit confused in the whole dynamics of the scene, like when she's telling her Petche to stomp out.
Yeah,
because obviously she wants her to stomp out because she believes that if they try to buy,
if Barclays buys them,
Barclays tries to buy, the stocks will go up, obviously.
Yeah.
But why is Petra against it? Just because she thinks that the deal will fall through?
Yes, I think Petra is convinced the deal will fall through, but also Petra doesn't know that Pierpoint is going to zero in the way that.
Why isn't that more reason for the deal to fall through?
No. It's more reason for Petra to believe in an idea because it's like, okay, we have this feeling. We just know that they're over leveraged and they took out this, the ESG stuff's not going right. That's our bet. Let's believe in that. She doesn't know the same way that Harper knows that Pierpoint is actually dire. Like they're dying today. Petra doesn't know that. She just thinks they have a short position that will come through eventually. But Harper knows that Pierpoint is dying today. And that's why they've got Barclays in to come and buy the bank today. I think that's the difference. So
I'm trying to so what does that extra information change Petra's point of view? What is illegal that Harper knows it, but why does knowing that Pierpoint is dying, why does that
because you can take a punt on, how do I put this? If you know that Pierpoint is dying, then you know they're going to try and save themselves, right?
Okay.
That's the main thing. Like, you know that they're now reaching and trying to do as much as they can. Like, they will be trying to get bought. If you think that they're dying, then someone from Barclays going in doesn't, because none of what they've seen is like a smoking gun yet. The real smoking gun is Sweet Pea putting everything together.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. It's about Rishi and I guess Sweet Pea and Anuraj and everything, and then we'll come back to Harper in a second. Why don't you lead since we're talking about Sweet Pea?
Fucking love Sweet Pea, man. Her first line in this episode is her boob job's amazing. It's insane. Oh, Sweet Pea.
Anuraj was chatting up this incredible MILF. Go Anuraj, go Anuraj, go.
Long live Sweet Pea, man.
It's so funny because I was thinking of a lot about margin call, obviously, but in this sequence, because remember how, for anyone who's on margin call, at the end, when Kevin Spacey, Kevin Spacey's in margin call, it's unfortunate, just go with it. When he's telling he tells the board first, look, the workers are going to want to do this because you're torpedoing their relationships, right? We need to compensate them, which is what Sweet Pea is like, why would we destroy relationships in the market for you? like for a company that's already going down, like what is actually the benefit here? So they decide not to sell out all of Rishi's positions, who I think was at a casino the last few hours.
Why do you
I
think that?
I think he said something about, but when he was like with a client.
Oh,
I think
okay.
he says, I don't know what he says there, but I think
I
it's
don't know
in
the
reference
slang,
to,
but that was my
I think
reading.
it's a reference to a casino. But Rishi seems very on edge throughout the episode.
And he says
when
he
he's
can't go
talking,
home.
which, come on, man, we just solved this like 3 months ago. What are we doing? Like, but like he's, a lot of the time he's like, when he's talking to, especially with Sweepy and Aaron, he's like looking around. And obviously we see Vinay's message. It's like, you have 24 hours. And then we also see that, also hear that he's been calling the desk. Rishi's arm, what do we think about that?
I think he got roughed up.
Yeah, by Vinay. Vinay broke his arm. I do wonder
Maybe
if it's one
Vinay's
of those things that like, I wonder if it's one of those things where like Sagar was just like, he actually broke his arm in real life and they wrote it into the show. Oh, but yeah. And then obviously when he's walking out, so you know when he's walking out of the thingy, he sees two people having sex above.
Yeah.
Was that real?
I don't think they're doing a dream sequence. What do you mean? Was that real?
Because to me, it looked very much like Diana and Nick. Is that his name?
Did it? No.
We only see a silhouette, so I don't know if it was, maybe it's just the show showing that Pierpoint is is crashing and entering the grocery.
I thought it was very like deck chairs on the Titanic. I thought it was like the people are reveling and having a party, but they don't know the ship is going down.
Cake. I thought it was that as well, but I was just like, that looks very much like, and you can go back to like the whole home thing or whatever. Okay, but the main thing I want to talk about Rishi is when he first tells Harper that he wants to bring Anraj and Sweepy along. And then later Harper is like, that's not possible. And then he's basically like, actually before that, I was going to ask Miriam this, but it seems like he watches football, so he might even know the terminology. Rishi is like, how do you feel about getting a Trecatista on a boss man? Do you know what that means? So, well, okay, do you know what a Trecatista is? You didn't play FM, so I don't think you know what a Trecatista is.
No, I don't.
So it's like a specialized role. It's basically like a version of a false nine, like a 10 who can play. Basically, for a long time in FM, Messi's best role was Trecatista. To tell you the kind of person it is, right? Anyway, and a boss man is a free transfer. So a boss man transfer is a free transfer. It's not a player boss man that I think suits his club.
I don't understand any of the stuff he was saying there. I was just like,
So he's basically saying, how do you like be Richard Trecatista? I'm this excellent playmaker. And how do you feel about getting me on a free transfer, essentially? That's what he's saying to Harper. And Harper is like, a boss man? Anyway, later Harper is like, we can't take 3 people. And then he's like, it's just me.
It's always me, babe.
Did you see a bit of like, I don't know, what was Harper's face there?
I thought the same thing. I don't know if it's guilt. Because, or like, I don't know.
I'm disappointed
in
my list.
The same thing. Yeah, I mean, she'd done the same thing in the season before, and
true,
killing Rishi and what's his face, DVD. Yeah.
To me, it was
so
like,
I don't know.
I don't know if
it was her recognizing that how distasteful that was. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I was just like, oh, that's interesting. That it's funny if the show is just trying to insert little bits of Harper humanity.
I think that's what it's doing, and I think it's good.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get to talk about this when William was here, but a lot of that Yasmin's monologue, whatever, reflects on what we said last week. Things of like her being a bad friend, never really loving anyone, things like that, and it's like, okay, yeah. I think we've kind of covered everything.
I think that's it. I think the main thing in this episode is the betrayal.
It's the betrayal
for me.
I do wonder, because I was thinking about this when we were talking about how the 2 main plot lines are quite different. In maybe 2 or 3 years, when I'm thinking about this episode, I do wonder what we would call it. Like, will we call it the Eric episode or the Yasmin and Robert episode?
I feel like it's the Eric episode.
Right now, it is 100%. I'm not arguing with them. I'm saying, I wonder what would happen in 2 years' time. Like, the more we watch it, like, also, what happens going from this episode? Like,
from the episode. Fair.
Yeah. Speaking of future episodes, we got a little tease from William about the finale, and it's completely spoiler free, so don't even bother, because obviously we're spoiler phobic. And all he said was that Eric's management offsite hoodie, was on Sweet Pea's chair. That's all. But maybe not Eric's actual hoodie, not just like the hoodie that Eric wore in season 1 was on Sweet Pea's chair. So just look out for that in the finale. I can't believe it's almost time for the finale. That's crazy.
I love Sweet Pea so much. I'm gonna miss her.
Obviously, we know we'll see Mock again. There have been pictures.
Why is that obvious?
Oh, well, I didn't know.
I didn't know. I didn't know we were gonna see. I was hoping, but I didn't know.
No, okay. So I've seen pictures, but also in like the first trailer, because I only watched the first trailer. There's this thing. There's like a ball, like a party with Mark, Robert, and Yasmin.
Yes.
And we still haven't seen that. So I'm assuming that, I'm assuming that's definitely in the finale. So I'm like, okay, we'll probably have to see. And then, we're going to see Mark again. There's just so many shots that from the trailer, the first trailer, that we've not yet seen. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to touch on?
How can Rishi still afford cocaine? How is he still cocained up?
What do you think his overdraft limit is?
I don't think he has one. I think they need to break two of his hands. Maybe his nose.
Because the cocaine thing, he could get cocaine on credit.
That's fair. But
I was just thinking, like, could he just still be tapping his card? Maybe he has like a 20,000 overdraft limit. I don't know.
I enjoyed them showing I guess it was the chairman of the Fed or the secretary of I don't know. Janet Yellen.
She was minister, wasn't she?
No.
Or the woman?
The Fed. Yeah.
Oh, I thought she was a minister of something.
No, she's American.
I didn't mean to say minister, sorry.
A senator.
God, senator. No, not senator. My brain is spazzing right now. Oh, Jesus Christ. My brain has lost any sense of semblance. People who are in charge of things in American politics. Who are the American equivalent of MPs? Congress
people? Or senators?
This is quite embarrassing. I don't know what's going to happen in my brain. Anyway, but yeah, they should. I don't know what just happened. They should.
I think she's meant to be like Secretary of State, either the Secretary of State for the Treasury or
no,
the chairman of the Fed. Yeah.
And I don't know what just happened. That's quite embarrassing.
She's a Democrat. She only pretends to have a heart. And I love that. And then she says the president still thinks we're fighting the Japanese. Banky, who is the president?
So I was thinking about this, and
is it Biden or is it Trump?
It probably has to be Biden.
I think it's Biden, and that really cracked me up
because it's a Democrat administration. So it has to be Biden. I liked. Oh, sure. Let's just talk about Aurora quickly.
Where is she? She didn't show up in this episode.
Yes, she did. With
shit! Do you know I forgot that whole part? Oh my god! Adekunle breaks the bank. Oh wow!
So
man, there was actually a lot in this episode.
Yeah, exactly. So she's going for chairman of the Exchequer.
Yes, chancellor.
And then from there, chancellor of the Exchequer, and then from there she goes for prime minister.
I think so. I think that's the path they've laid out for her. The cabal.
We always earmarked Kit Harington. Oh, this is the Kit Harington guest starring season and everything, right? Also, Petra's season. We just didn't know that other people were going to be so important and so good.
That's fair.
Like Otto Mostyn,
Aurora.
Lord Norton. I was just like, Aurora doesn't really count because she was there last season. But you get what I'm trying to say? I was like when I saw them in episode 1, I was like, okay, these are people that we're not going to see again.
Fair. That's fair.
And then
they've been in almost every episode. That's true.
So good. Are so good. Are so influential. Are so important. Yeah. Okay. I think. Yeah, so obviously they are on their path to getting out to prime minister in maybe a few years, but for now she wants to be chair of the Exchequer. I don't think I have anything else, right?
I
think that's kind
I
of
think
it.
that's it. It's an immense episode of television. Shout out to Tom. Shout out to Sweet Pea. Anraj, shout out for standing up for yourself and becoming extremely, extremely South London in that scene.
Small syndrome, bro.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much.
Secretary,
cool.
that's the word I was looking
favorite
for.
Secretary.
So Secretary of the
like
Treasury. Isn't it Secretary of the Treasury?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't know what just happened. Yeah, David, do you have any overhead line?
I didn't overhear any lines in this episode.
I mean, there's just one, but it's not really, like I said, it's not really that. It was just...
What is it?
I think it was Williamina that says, I haven't seen a price action this aggressive since Lehman Brothers.
Oh,
again, just doubling down on the Lehman comp.
Okay, what was your favorite line?
I'll do that for the finale. My favorite line stroke reaction was when Tom tells Wilhelmina, why do you keep speaking?
It's so good. It's so
when
good.
the net gain of your ideas is 0.
Less than 0. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good.
The Eric and Bill Adler's reaction.
Eric chuckles. He chuckles.
And I hold himself. Even Adler laughs as well, but you don't see it because the camera is not on him. Oh gosh.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good.
Oh god.
I think mine was Eric going to Adler, why, like, how do you still have the energy for this? And then Adler saying, what else is there?
The action is the juice.
Either that or Adler when the Mitsubishi representative picks up a Red Bull can from the floor, and then Adler goes, how'd that get there? I don't know if that was a Spider-Man reference, but I cannot wait to use that as a meme.
What's the Spider-Man reference?
Oh, you're not on TikTok, so this makes no sense to you. But a TikTok sound over the last maybe year and a half has been, oh, how did that get in there? And it's in Spider-Man 3, I think, when he puts wine in Mary Jane's glass of champagne. And then he goes, how did that get in there?
You're really on TikTok. Do you know where the action is the juice line is from?
Tell me. I do know, but tell me.
Well, obviously you'd know, so yeah, but like I just wanted to remind you, please go watch Heat. Yeah, finally. Carve out 3 hours and watch Heat.
Oh, such a task.
Your favorite show has referenced Heat word for word twice already this season 2 and season 3, so go watch Heat. But that's from Heat. Fine. Yeah, the action is the juice.
Fine.
Okay. Thank you very much. What?
No, I was just saying the line again from Adler. How did that get there? Perfect meme
I'm
material.
pretty sure it's the TikTok reference. But anyway, okay. Thank you to William for dropping by for his expertise. I will link his articles in the description. The one with Sagar, the one with Miriam for episode 5, and then the one with Kent Long for this episode 7. And A and I will be back for the finale. Can't believe it's already been 8 weeks. Yeah, talking about the finale of the best TV show this year. And join us next week, and of course we'll be joined by Oscar winner Daniel Kaluuya. Bye guys.